Hi, I'm Pastor Mike. Welcome to my study. This is where I study Scripture because I believe knowing Scripture makes a difference. And if you'd like to know how, this is the channel for you.
I've noticed that people have two difficulties using paper maps. First is that it's hard to find where they want to go on a map. But the second, it's just as hard to find where they're starting at on the map. Many start by finding their destination on the map, but still don't know which way to go because they don't know what direction that location is from where they actually are. Where the destination on the map is in relationship to their present location in the real world. This is what might be called a navigational problem. And when we come to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is presenting another kind of navigational problem. Matthew has spent 2.5 chapters trying to explain how to get from point A to point B, not on a paper map, but in a spiritual reality. And as he closes, he wants them to understand not the destination, but the journey. What will it be like to get there? You see, the first listeners had lots of ideas of what the destination would look like. The Pharisees or the Sadducees would hold themselves up as the spiritually accomplished, and were always looking for ways to get others to follow them. The mountain audience also had a strong opinion of where they were. Not a high opinion, but a clear opinion of their present spiritual condition. Early in the sermon, Jesus had said the Pharisees' righteousness was not the right destination. But if the Pharisees didn't have the destination right, how were the listeners ever going to get there? And we can ask the same question. If Jesus has set such a high standard, how will we ever get there? How will we know which direction to start and when to make course corrections? Who do we listen to among the many who claim to know the way? As Jesus gives direction to those first listeners, we find Scripture that makes a difference for our journey as well. When starting his conclusion to the sermon, Jesus points the first century Jews toward a narrow gate, saying any way that is wide enough to be easy leads to destruction. Oh, many will find it, but they won't like the destination. The right way to start is narrow and a struggle, and few will follow it. But it doesn't lead to destruction, but to life. The contrast between destruction and life is interesting. We think of destruction as synonymous with annihilation, but the first hearers would have associated it more with waste, as in a wasted life or wasted opportunities. Many have taught that life meant heaven, but I think the first listeners would have seen this word as describing the profit of entering the kingdom of heaven. So, having chosen the path, the listeners are presented with a choice of guides. They're cautioned against those who ravage like wolves. They may seem honest and innocent initially, like sheep, but turn out to be wolves who see sheep as assets to be used for their own gain. Jesus says they'll be obvious by their fruit or the produce of their lives. One implication of this test is that it takes time to get to know a person. If he is himself producing a way that is desirable, then that person would be good to follow. The right path and the right guide are important, but the right goal is essential too. Someone has said, if you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you get there? To these first listeners, Jesus says, not everyone who calls me Lord will enter the kingdom. In fact, many will claim to have done his bidding, casting out demons and doing mighty works. The thought seems to be power over demons and the ability to impress with miracles gets one into Jesus' kingdom. But surprisingly, Jesus implies not doing, but knowing provides their access. I never knew you precedes depart from the kingdom. So a relationship with Jesus is more important than producing for him. And the security of knowing Jesus and his way would be as obvious to the first audience as the stability of a house. It only makes sense that building a house on sand would not produce a secure structure. It might be easier, but it would be less secure. Building on a rock would provide a secure foundation, just like choosing the harder life Jesus describes would lead to a more secure result. But the reaction of the crowd is different from what the 21st century American might expect. While we might critique the presentation or praise the truth of the statement, they reacted to the authority of the presentation. He was different from the usual speaker. I find it surprising that Matthew didn't say that many chose the kingdom way, but that they felt comfortable comparing. Now, just as Jesus gave his audience a choice, we have a choice too. We can follow the Jewish example and comment on the clarity of Jesus' presentation and the imagination of his illustrations. We can set his ways alongside the ways of other spiritual leaders and compare the likely difficulties and benefits. We can gain all the knowledge Jesus delivers, or we can know him. I think Jesus is saying, choose carefully. And a careful choice will consider all the factors. God exists. Each of us has violated his ways. No one can live up to the standard this king has set in the last 2.5 chapters. Jesus came to reconcile us to God. We've failed, but God hasn't given up on us. And finally, we must decide if we can ignore Jesus and be just as well off, or if we would be better off following his ways. Many have found that an honest examination of these points point to the wisdom of following him. At this point, a lot of preachers would ask you to say a prayer or raise your hand or check a box. The Bible doesn't require these. In fact, they may lead some people to believe that they've done something to enter into Jesus' kingdom. If you're motivated to pray, please do. If you're motivated to read the Bible, please do. But the only criteria for a right response is to trust what Jesus has said. I'll say more about those issues in a future episode. At any rate, you have a choice. It may not be as clear as you might like, but learning about that choice from this passage makes this scripture that makes a difference. This video is adapted from the messages of Sunrise Fellowship, where we believe scripture makes a difference. If you like this content and would like more, click the subscribe button on our YouTube page and click the bell so you can be notified when I post new material. Or you can follow our Facebook page. And when you share this message on your favorite social media, you help get the difference-making scripture to others. I've included some relative links below. Also, I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or reactions, type them on our Facebook page or on our YouTube page. Your feedback will be more helpful in improving our conduct. If you live anywhere near Enid, Oklahoma, we'd love to meet you. Our location is on our Facebook page. I hope you'll come back again and hear more scripture that makes a difference.